Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She is a woman seeking greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. This week, Her Conversations welcomes Dionne Roberts, founder of Declog Body Mind. In our conversation this week, she talks about her journey from artist and dancer to teacher of Yoga Nidra. Dionne also tells us about how travel altered her perceptions, her conversion to Buddhism, and also touches on her experience as a woman of colour in the yoga space, and of course so much more in between. So as always, I begin the episode by asking the question, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most HER?
I feel at my best. I think HER stands for feeling at your best, and I feel at my best during and after my meditation practice. And it's kind of a contradiction because of the acronym being a high energy, and meditation isn't that. But for me, it's about when you've really resonated to your best self and best place. And that is during and after meditation.
And everyone has a story that's kind of brought them into the work that they're doing today. And you want to talk a little bit about your life journey and how it's brought you into doing what you're doing, specifically your meditations?
Whew, that's a big one. I always struggle to narrow that down. I think the best way to narrow it down, it brings to mind an about me page I was writing for a leaflet many years ago, like a couple of decades ago, that eventually went on to a website. And it was answering the why I do what I do, how I do what I do, when I do what I do, and where I do what I do. And it all began for me when I was a dancer and I was exploring. I was writing my dissertation, and because I was injured and only just by the crook of my neck got my degree in contemporary dance, although, a piece of paper in reference to professional dance doesn't mean anything, it's the actual practicalness that does. However, I was there laid up in bed writing this paper, and instead of it being about this choreography and this movement and that movement and how to bring it into the modern times, my choreography and my dissertation and my work and everything at that time started to explore why we move, which led me to how we move. And the books I was reading and the research I was doing made me, informed me that movement comes from a thought. It actually comes from the mind. And we never ever look at that. We think, oh, it's my arm, my leg. My leg moved, my leg walked. And when I really took it all the way back and found that movement starts from the mind, the intention to move starts from the mind, and then all the other systems within the body work together to carry out that expression of movement. And the how is about the desire to move. When we're sitting there and we're thirsty and we need water, that's the desire. That need is the desire. and so on and so forth. So anyway, my whole work became about that, and I think every stage of my life and every piece of work from then onwards and how it came into meditation all came from that, because from that I I forgot what I was going to say for a moment there. From that exploration, I started to move. I relearned how to walk again. I never danced professionally, but dancing for joy was the level I wanted to reach, so that I can call myself healthy again. And I reached that, then picked up my rucksack and became a nomad, and then never stopped moving, so to speak, in a different way. So that, I guess, led me into the healing arts. The injury itself led me into the healing arts, but the research inquiry in reference to why, how, and where we move led me into the healing arts. And the research as well that I did at that time led me into the healing arts, which was to become a massage therapist, to become a yoga teacher. And the time I became a yoga teacher, the first experience of becoming a yoga teacher was the exact time that I found meditation and became a Buddhist. They happened at the same time, they happened at the same place, and they happened when I was a nomad moving around, and that happened in Southeast Asia.
Cool. Okay. And just talking about, you're saying you travelled and you moved around a lot. How instrumental do you think it was in helping you to really commit to making those life changes, or recognising the benefit of those practices, how they could benefit you before you even thought of maybe going into teaching them, just kind of what they could do for you personally in terms of being a nomad as opposed to being in a city where you're distracted and got modern life on your doorstep all the time? Do you think it made a difference that you were in a different environment, or you would have found it eventually?
I think I would have found it eventually, but I think that, a calling comes when it comes, and we don't have any control as to when or how it comes. Like, for example, the house I lived in at the time that I was disabled and healing myself from my dance injury, there was actually a Buddhist centre or house I didn't even know, that was literally a few doors down from where I lived, and I didn't know, I had no idea. And during that time of still being there, before I got on a plane, I took up Ashtanga yoga. And when I took up Ashtanga yoga, as you all know, those that are listening, or most of you know, that Ashtanga yoga is the most powerful, the most dynamic, the most yang form of yoga. But I tried Hatha yoga at the time, and being a young 20-something girl, I was like, oh my God, this is for sleeping. Wasn't interested at all. So with my disabled self that couldn't get down to the floor and up, I went to an Ashtanga yoga class, and everyone's jumping about. And I thought, yeah, this is for me, because, I was a contemporary dancer, so that element of movement was for me. And when it came to going down into plank and going into upward dog and downward dog, while everybody was doing 5 salutes, I did 1. And I just, shook my knees and eventually got on all fours. And then with my palms down, I very gently straightened my leg and then the other leg. And that's how I did it. And week after week, I got faster. Week after week, I no longer needed the wall to steady my fall. And I continued week after week after week. 1 year later, I got on the plane. Eventually, I ended up in Thailand. And by then, I was doing yoga every day by myself. And as I was traveling around Thailand, Cambodia, Laos and other countries, people were asking me to teach them. And I thought to myself, I'm no yoga teacher. I can't teach. And then also on that trip, people kept telling me about these Vipassana, Anapanasati's meditation retreats in silence. And I also, thought that was a joke because, I was into movement, and that also meant that, I visited the party islands, and I, loved dancing for recreation, for fun, for joy, for bliss, external bliss, that is. And so being quiet and being still was just not the was not the that's the combination of death for me at that time. Being 20, I was 26 at the time, and you're telling me to be quiet and still. I just laughed, and I eventually actually ended up in a monastery called Swan Walk in the south of Thailand, an international monastic retreat center. And it was actually quite funny because I kept bumping into, on the first day, people that I recognized from partying, like, weeks before, a month before, 2 months before. And each time I met somebody and they met me, we would actually go up in silence and ask for a different key so that we could change rooms and not be next to one another, because we knew we would just be a bad influence. But on that retreat, on that first day, we also had to, due to what's called karma yoga, you had to put your name down to a job. And one of the jobs on there was yoga teacher. And I was like, And then, you break it up, this yoga teacher and cleaning the toilets. I mean, come on, which one are you going to choose, So, my heart's going, and it's like, how can I do that? I've never done that. Where would I start? But, do I want to clean the toilets? Do I want to sweep the courtyard? No, not really. So I scribbled down, I'll do it if somebody else does it with me and we share it. So later on that evening, you go back and they pin on the wall, or was it on the table, who's doing what. And I saw my name, and I saw this other girl's name. So we waited around, found each other, and we stated what, how we would divide the class up. So on this 10-day silent retreat, the only day I could talk, the only moments I could talk was when I was teaching. And in reference to movement and teaching and speaking, let me give you this one story. So, for example, just in reference to the experience of being there at this centre, there was a comment box where us as international students of meditation could say what we thought about, I don't know, the food, the yoga. We could ask questions as well to the monks and nuns who was teaching us about this technique and that technique of Vipassana and Anapanasati, which is mindfulness with breathing, by the way. Vipassana is mindfulness of the mind itself. And and you can put all your complaints in there as well. One lady wrote something about my teaching style. Oh, yes, that was it. It was about my speaking. And she said that, could we have a teacher that spoke English? Oh, by the way, I am English. I was born in Great Britain. So when I got this, I did laugh. And I had to address it because obviously her and her friends or what have you was not enjoying the yoga class because of the way I spoke, which was broken English. And I specifically spoke in broken English so that everybody else that was not English, some people could not follow fluid English, could understand me. So it was really, really interesting to be on this silent retreat and one, to get this, this negative feedback. Two, to see and understand and step into other people's shoes and see how their silence is treating them, how the power of silence is making them yearn for a tongue that they could feel, a tongue as in speech, that they could feel akin to and at home with and solidarity with. And because they couldn't, it might as well have sounded, Russian, German, Italian or Spanish to them. They found fault with it. And I just find it really, really interesting. I bet you're all wondering what did I actually say. So so I read the note out word for word, and I explained that there's some people here that cannot speak English and cannot understand fluid English, and some people have never done yoga before, and therefore I'm choosing to speak and that I am British and that I can speak fluidly, but I'm choosing not to, and I'm choosing to speak in a broken English way so that everybody can understand. But I also chose to address the subtext. And as a therapist, which is also what I became, the subtext for me in that, besides the person being, struggling with silence, was how we learn. And of course, that person, she's more of an audio person rather than a visual person, because I'm teaching a visual thing. But when you're in silence, there's so much emotions that can arise. And one of the major emotions that we have, besides attachment and a lack of wisdom, which is called ignorance in Buddha Dharma, is anger. And it was anger is where she was coming from. And she was just finding an outlet, like we all do, just finding a place to put it so that it doesn't destroy the inside of us, the inside of her. So that is the subtext that I chose to address. And I said, as we know that we have two places, we can stay in the yoga class, or we can go to the other, to the other hall and practice yoga by ourselves. And I hope you all do stay. But learning is like anything in life. Nobody can actually make us learn. We can give the material. We can give the instructions. We can sit when the with the person as they read the instructions, follow the instructions, carry the instructions out. But it's like that very, very beginning of the research that I did about movement. You can't make the person do it. So a horse can bring its calf to the water well. And a mother can bring her baby to her nipple. But both cannot make them suck, drink, and receive the nourishment that they need. And then I said, I'm happy to step down as your teacher if you wish. So, let the community know. But that's all I have to say. The rest is up to you.
And do you remember your first experience when you came out of retreat, when you came out of a silent retreat? What you got from that? How were you feeling like going into it, knowing that it was probably like the biggest challenge you'd undertaken, and then how you felt on the other side of it, what it brought to you, and what then inspired you to know that you wanted to do it and really take it on board as part of a lifelong practice?
The first, because I went 2 times on that one trip. The first time, and by the way, that story happened in the second visit, which is when I was teaching the yoga class completely on my own. The first time when I left, it was on the last day. So I had a great time. I loved it. I loved it so much that I synced and dissolved into this place in myself that I never knew existed, that I never saw before. And they asked me if I wanted to stay. And I contemplated staying. But if truth be told, when I entered the place, I was on a holiday away from my partner. So I needed to go back and clean things up with them. Mm-hmm. And to have stayed at that time would have been to run away from my shit. And I'm too much of a fighter to run away from my shit. So I declined their offer. And the teachings on that very, very last day just changed my life forever. It was a teaching called the 12 dependent links, or the wheel of life or death, or the wheel of attachment. These are all the titles that are given to it. But it basically explains our karmic and our mental psychology, cyclical existence. So it kind of, how can I put this in simple words? So basically, do you know those questions you have as a kid and you get told, oh, it just is. Mm-hmm. You know, like, why is the sky blue? Oh, it just is. Or, you know, sometimes you get, because it's in the Bible. And I always, those answers was never enough for me. Never enough. And when they explained this teaching and they pulled down this drape, and it was an image as well, because I'm quite a visual person, and I saw the pictures and I saw how this wheel worked, it answered so many questions for me. It was wow.
Questions like what?
Life and death. Mm-hmm. And also the where, why, and how. For example, in reference to that, because I have spoken quite a bit about that, just the journey of craving something, desiring something, grasping at something, and becoming attached to it. Mm. And that's in that wheel. That's exactly how our mind works. That's exactly how everything in our life is created. I was like, holy fuck. Mm-hmm. And then I found that I had more questions and more questions. And as I asked a question, it got answered. Oh, by the way, that was the only time, we could talk. It was the end, and they were giving this presentation. We could ask questions. And they would get answered, and they would get answered, and they would get answered. And they would get answered instead of, because I said so. Or it just is. Or it's in a mythological story, such as, I'm not knocking any religion, by the way, when I say the Bible. It's just how I was brought up, and that was the answers I heard. I do respect the Bible, and I, respect the Kabbalah, all the holy books. I really, really do. But I need to experience what the books are saying. So when somebody says to me that a craving ends in attachment. That's a mental experience I have, we all have, on a moment by moment basis. That's why Buddhism and science are so close together. And so I felt confident that whatever questions I would have in life, I could find it in the 84,000 teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni taught. And knowing that, I knew right then, in that moment, which was a shock to me, because I hated religion. All religion I hated what religion had done to women, or should I say how the patriarchal society had used religion as a tool to do onto women. But that was my attitude. So to actually, like, for a moment, have the realization that I am this label, which is Buddhist, was holy fuck to me. It was just like, oh, it's like being whacked with a tennis ball. And then, as I said, it was the experience of teaching yoga, and I knew that I was destined to do that. If you haven't caught on by now, they kept me as a teacher. So I came out with those two things the first time, and the world looked so different. So different. And it's never looked the same since.
Especially coming from, because you come from West Indian background, is it?
Yes, I do.
And then having this experience of Buddhism, which is not necessarily a religion, but of course when you come from a very strong West Indian background where it's highly Christian, how did that, even though you weren't necessarily religious, did you find any... Did you kind of easily step into the Buddhist lifestyle? Were there any kind of conflicts, like areas of kind of, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Where there's like this new thing that's opened up the world for you, and it's like, this is where I'm going. But as much as you're going forward, there's still tentacles of ideas that maybe you may not kind of like embrace. You might not be going to church every Sunday and reading the scriptures and the Bible and everything, but elements of those that you had to kind of disengage or kind of just examine before you could step wholly into Buddhism.
Well, luckily for me, I didn't have that in the way you may think. Because I didn't come from a religious family. I grew up in an area that's a very secular British neighbourhood. By that I mean there wasn't the church-going families there. So and then my mother had 6 children. So what my parents did, they kind of like decided to sort of hedge their bets. So they put 3 children in a non-Catholic school and 3 children in a Catholic school. And they so hedged their bets that I was actually christened Catholic and Church of England. I mean, you know what I mean? It was just like, we'll just try whatever works, That's the kind of family I came from, It's like, we go with this. So no, not in that way. However, saying that, I was so moved by the experience when I came out the first time. Moved the second time too, but and the third time when I went back a few years later. But I ended up writing an email. Emails was just out. It was 1999. And I actually wrote the timetable of what we did. I was like, I've been to this place and this is what it was like, and this is what we did, and this is how I feel. And that's all I wrote. And we're saying, and now we're just staying in Bangkok for a bit, and now we're going to head north, and now I'm going to head north and meet back up with Joe, and that's all I wrote. And the backlash from that was huge. That was from black people, white people, middle class, working class, male, female, everyone.
What was the main resistance people were finding?
I can't remember the emails exactly. I just remember that some people stopped emailing me after that. Some people didn't want to see me when I got back. Still out of my life now. It was this fear. Oh my God, she's joined a cult.
Yeah.
I mean, like, nobody commented on, oh, I'm really glad you found your calling and you're a yoga teacher. I mean, it was just like, there was no weight given to that. It was just absurd to them. It's like, but I'm traveling around Southeast Asia. Every single country in Southeast Asia, main religion is Buddhism. I mean, why is it such a shock? I mean, do we not think about it when we eat our green curry? Our green Thai curry? I mean, yeah, it was... But that was there. That happened.
And have you not seen any one of that? Or no one's ever voiced it? Or since then?
Not from that crowd or people in my life then. I mean, that we're talking 2 decades ago. No. More recently, I had a family member about 10 years ago not understand. And it was at a time that it was really wrong for him to be voicing that, because it was panicking my mother, who was ill. And I had to ask another family member to step in to chill that level of inquiry about my lifestyle, so that we can just focus on our mother.
It's interesting how when you go and do something or voice something like that, what it brings out in people. The grown folk, that are holding down responsible lives. Because I remember years ago, before I even really started kind of travelling, and I've not even really started travelling, but it was one Christmas, and I remember sitting around the table, and all that seemed to be being spoken about were the white goods in the kitchen, and the fact that they matched and they all came from this particular brand. And I'm sitting there just going, I couldn't join in the conversation, so of course everyone thought there was something wrong with me. But then I was like saying, it's like, well, what are you up to, Carol? Because, I've never trodden the path that's made any sense to anyone. And I'm like, I really want to travel. I really want to properly start traveling, And it's like, but you've got to be careful because it's a big world out there, And I'm like, that's exactly why I have to go. And it was just weird, because like how one person, it can be their biggest fear, and I'm like, but that's the reason. It's like we're sitting on like a grain of sand, and there's a whole beach, and we just want to spin around on this one thing, and there's all of that. How can you not be curious? How can you not be? How can you
totally hear you?
How can you not be curious? And it's weird, because we were just both as weirded out by each other, because you're just looking there going, you're nuts, and I'm like, you're nuts. You're just like, we're just politely admitting that we're just both nuts together. And then of course, when I was going to, last year that I declared I was going to India, it's like, as a black woman going to India on your own, it's like you're going to get sick or raped or food poisoning, or something's going to get you. And I came back and was fine. I was more ill when I came back and had to like integrate eating the bland food here, It was it's interesting how when you step out of an idea, how much it brings up, and one person's fear is one person's like inspiration and impetus to go. It's so interesting, and I'm meeting so many different people and speaking to so many different people, and just seeing how they're just kind of stepping out of the choices, or stepping into the choices that we have that most people don't see, or are too afraid to see. And it's interesting, especially when you kind of look on Facebook and you see people that you went to school with 20 years ago and how different your lives are, and it's just like, wow. And we all started at the same spot, and we all seemed the same, and then degree by degree we just kind of ended up 20 odd years later just doing weirdly different things, you know, and they seem so, especially the ones that were rebels at school. You know? A lot of the rebels aren't, you know, they're the most responsible ones. God bless them, you know. But yeah, I wanted to find out more about your classes as well that you're doing, because you're doing a lot of classes in the UK, up and down.
Yes, Birmingham and London mostly. So from teaching the most youngest form of yoga, I've now, how many years later? 19 years later, have gone way over to the other side and is now teaching the most subtlest, the most yinist form of yoga going. And that is Yoga Nidra. Yeah, it's about Nidra.
And can you talk more, because that's one part of yoga I know that I know very little about. Can you talk more into what Nidra is?
Yeah, Nidra stands for when yoga stands for union. And that's union of body and mind and our emotional, energetic self. And Nidra stands for sleep. It stands for dream. It stands for the psyche. So in Yoga Nidra, it is the conscious awareness of that very, very state, that state between dream and sleep. And I absolutely love it. I really, really do. It's a practice that requires no movement, no stretching, no strengthening. You simply lie down and get taken on a journey that welcomes you back to yourself, a journey that grounds you, but at the same time cleanses you. And it does that by, as your body is grounding and as your body is completely letting go into the earth, your mind is just traveling. And not traveling in that monkey mind state, but being taken on a guided tour, a guided journey. And as you do so, your energy body gets a kosher wash. In that state where you touch brainwave-wise, you touch into your theta brainwave, because Yoga Nidra correlates exactly to the same scientific process that your mind and body goes through when you're asleep. So you travel from beta alpha down to theta, into delta sometimes, then back up to theta. And that conscious, or should I say subconscious awareness you have that you're lying in Nidra, so it looks like you're asleep, but you are consciously aware, and therefore you are in a dream-like state, is when you can actually make some real change. You can make some real changes to your cellular system, completely renew yourselves. I'm not saying renew, I don't mean renew in the sense of, the memory of your cells being sick, for example, being transferred onto the new cell that's like being born at that time. I'm talking that cell completely dying and new cells regenerating. I'm talking about real deep cleansing. And as for speaking to the subconscious mind at that point, in reference to what conscious changes you want to make, when they are suggested to you in that auto state. You are really, really placing it within your mental continuum, so that when you arise out of that state, you can make those changes. And it does other things like, reset all your systems, your nervous system, your reproductive system, your respirational system. It reharmonizes all the different pulses of all your organs. Every organ has its own pulse, has its own story. And sometimes there are blockages within that, and there are obstacles within them. And to soothe them in Yoga Nidra, and to get them to reharmonize and beat as in the frequency they are meant to be beating in, just reharmonizes the whole body, and therefore the whole body mind. And what I mean is the union of body mind. And therefore, like all my work, I like it. I go for work and have always been drawn to things that addresses both, that have an impact on both the body and mind. Because it's only through using the temple of the body in the right way that we can actually take that next step up in our consciousness, take that next step up to that place that we're put on this earth to actually be and do. We've done all the we've invented the wheel, we've gone beyond inventing the wheel, and we have invented planes, and it's time now that we fly within ourselves as human beings and actually step up to that next stage of consciousness and actually become enlightened beings and stop fucking about. But some of us are still based, you know what I mean? Some of us, although they're probably on a plane, we're still mentally based, which is why we're still killing one another and we still have discrimination.
How do you think your contribution is going to help break down those perceived walls, the differences that we imagine ourselves to have in terms of colour and sex and religion and nationality and all of these?
When I try to do it in everything that I do as an artist, I commented on it. Have been from being, before I was a dancer, I was at art school, and my work was met with some fierceness there.
Elaborate.
Oh my gosh. A fine art painting of the Last Supper. They were all transvestites. A fashion show where I walked down and the theme was recycled materials, and I dressed up as the KKK, then stripped it off at the end of at the bottom of the catwalk, and had a Zulu Hassian outfit on underneath. I mean, it just goes on. Just my work.
A little bit of light stuff then.
But bringing it up to date, I mean, when you experience Nidra, for example, and you realise that you are more than your skin incapacitated self, and therefore you are more than your colour, you are more than your education, you are more than your faith, you are more than your gender. That is a realisation.
And the question that pops to mind as well is, even though we know these things, we've still got to be aware that, like, for the majority, we are black women, and they're going to see us as that.
Mm-hmm. I like to call it the uniform.
Yeah.
The uniform I cannot take off.
Exactly. This is what we're wearing for now until we croak and come back and put another one on, if we choose to come back here. How do you find that you're being approached or accepted, or you're finding that women of colour are coming to you and feeling confident in approaching their spirituality via you, as opposed to the stereotypical white middle class girl? Do you know what I mean? Because I know there are some within the yoga community that are making or wanting to make a difference, but they're going about it in a way that I'm like, is this the right way to go? As in, it's like it's for us. It's so it doesn't seem any more open than just going to a class and just thinking that you're the only black person in there. Do you know what I mean? For me, I've always been, I'll go where the information is. It doesn't matter what suit, what uniform the person is wearing. I need the information.
So are you asking, is one race, a female, feeling more comfortable in opening up and talking to me than another when I stand there as a teacher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes no difference.
You're not finding that?
No. And that is because sometimes, depending on whether, when it's my own events, then they already know that I'm black. Well, sometimes. Sometimes I do a little bit of, I don't include a bio picture. Yeah, because we all know that a bio picture can actually bring up the things that you're talking about. So I guess the reason my answer is no is because I don't include a bio picture. Yeah, so they have to deal with it when they arrive, and then the work speaks for itself. So when the work speaks for itself, then my answer to you is still a no, because the work speaks for itself, and then they have that realization. And even though it's temporary, it's definitely temporary, but how it influences their life afterwards, that actually could start to eventually grow onto a more permanent realization. And so therefore it may take some time for that to actually kick in after they've awakened up after the Nidra. So for the time that they're with me, if they are that way inclined, then that is suspended. And as for more going into more detail about whether a black woman or lady or girl feels more comfortable approaching me than other when I teach. No, because the other, be it Asian, be it Oriental, be it mixed race, be it white, Caucasian, they're here for yoga, and therefore they do not care. Now, of a certain age, and also of a certain culture, a culture where patriarchy is really, really big, they care that I'm a woman more so than colour. Because if I'm a woman, they don't mind going into certain positions. They don't mind going into downward dog and their bum being up in the air. And then when I align them correctly, which opens up the hips more, that isn't an issue. But if I was a male teacher, they would feel, or even a black woman, because of the oppression of black women via just mankind in general, to the age of a woman who's over 50, they would also feel a little bit, I don't want to, open my body up in that way to a man in the room, or as a teacher, should I say? So that is more of an issue. But generally, everybody feels comfortable. But saying that, I did have one man come up to me in a gym saying that when he heard me speak softly, he didn't think he was going to enjoy the class. And he thought that I wouldn't be able to command the space, is what he said. And then the class started, and he said his mind was just so surprised. And I said, was I able to hold the space enough for you? And he said, yes, very, very. And in fact, it was too much. But he never came back.
Wow.
Because he wanted to be that devil's advocate in the class. And when he found that he actually couldn't, that's why it was too much. He found he actually had a good time. and that yoga touched him.
It's a big admission for some people, isn't it? I think some of the most intensive classes that I've ever had have always been with softly spoken teachers. Always, whatever kind of yoga it's been, or meditation or anything like that, it's always when someone brings their voice down to an audible point, but to a point of softness but strength. That because I kind of like bring down and then tune completely into that, it feels more. It's when someone's shouting or just coming at, then
I think it depends on what type of yoga it is. I really, really do. But I also think it's like, different people like different things, and we also like different things at different times of our lives. Yet like different styles and techniques, or teachers, should I say, or teacher styles, should I be more specific to say, at different ages in our lives. And also as teachers we change, because when I was an Ashtanga teacher, my voice, this voice was not there. My Yoga Nidra voice is not my Ashtanga teacher voice. My Ashtanga teacher voice was actually hardcore. And I met somebody who I hadn't seen in 25 years, and I saw her last year, and she remembers me as her first yoga teacher. And I remembered her. She had a very, very unique body, and she couldn't believe how I looked. She couldn't believe my voice. She couldn't believe anything. So changes occur, and we did talk about it a little bit, and all I could say was that was what was required at the time, because of the environment. I was teaching in a massive goth. Is it called goth? The architecture, I think it is. Gothic building, big, massive round pillows, the trunk of a tree, and there was like 12 in the first quarter of the hall, 12 in the third quarter of the hall, and it was in a public space. It was in a library. It was Leeds Library, and so I had to deliberately project my voice up into the ceiling, because no microphone worked, by the way. I tried lots of different microphones out at that time, and none of them was work. This was back in, what year was this? This is when I got back this is when I just became a yoga teacher, so it was year 2000, 2001. And so I had to project my voice up into the hall, and then allow the sound it was like me making surrounded sound. Allow it to go all the way around the hall, and then bounce from the ceiling down to the walls, and then to the people. And that's how I had to teach. And I would, at the beginning of term, I would have 70 students, and Ashtanga was just coming out. Ashtanga just came. I was one of the first. I only know one of the teacher in Birmingham at the time, in the year 2000, that was teaching Ashtanga, and I was teaching in Birmingham and Leeds, and advertised, and the first we just plugged our phone out because the phone wouldn't stop ringing. For 3 days before the class, we just plugged it out. Me and my partner couldn't take the noise anymore, and 73 people turned up. That was the same that was in the monastery. And although I was thinking, gosh, can I do this? I just remembered the monastery, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. You can do this. And there was and when I went because I was on my teacher training at the same time, by the way. So I taught before my teacher training, which is a whole nother story, I guess. Yes, I was insured, by the way, and yeah, it's just so. Yeah, circumstances makes you have to change your voice, is all I can say. And the style, the style is dynamic. The style is boom, 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 boom. So I would, I would do the one, 1, 2, 3, 4 counts, and inhale and exhale with each, from as you move from A to B, from B to C. But then I would just go and that was a technique. Yeah, that was literally high energy. High energy resonance.
Check that. I never really jumped into the Ashtanga that much, Not really. I went through a Bikram phase.
Yeah, I touched that.
Like everyone had to do that.
And then I used to come home and try to make my bathroom into a Bikram studio. I used to like hot water, heaters. Yeah. Yeah, I went through that stage. I went through all the stages. I mean, Iyengar, Hatha, Germany, Vinyasa, Power. Yeah. Went through all of them.
Yeah, Ashtanga a little bit, but it wasn't. I don't think I was fully into yoga then. I think it was something that Madonna was doing on television. But I hadn't kind of brought.
Don't forget Sting.
Brought to, yeah, but he's more famous for his tantric. Isn't he? God bless him. But that's a different conversation altogether, the tantra conversation. But yeah, that's so much to talk about, and just want to find out like kind of some of your inspirations, if you have any. So the questions that I like to ask all of my guests. First one would be, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given you?
I'm literally cringing at this question. I'm really sorry that I am. I when I listen to interviews and watch interviews, it is a very, very popular question that people like to know what we built on. And okay, so I'm going to continue, and then I go back to what happened in that pause. So as I was saying, that people do ask that question, and I can never think of anybody, simply because I'm also really, really terrible with names. Don't do names or dates, never have done, and even now that I'm older, memory's a bit dodgy. So there isn't anybody. There really, really isn't. I get touched by so many people and things, and so everything just becomes a collaboration within me. And then, as you were repeating the question and finalising it, I thought of the negative. Because I'm quite a striver, and being a child, first generation, growing up in the 80s, and therefore, racism made me more than anything. And then in that pause, I had a female Buddha deity just touched my heart, sort of knocked on the door. I don't know why, but I've got like a Yorkshire accent coming on here, saying "Eop." And it's not how my Buddhist deity talks at all, but you know what I mean? It comes how it comes. And because, he, she is everything and everywhere. And I said, I said to her as I was pausing, kind of like, yeah, I know that, but how on earth can I say that? How can I say that to these people? So I think the answer is source. Not everybody is Buddhist, so source. Source has given me the greatest advice of my life. Has no form, it has no gender.
And I don't know if you're going to like to answer this part.
No, ask me my way. Go on. Stop cringing here.
Anyway.
Go on.
Okay, so which female do you think represents high energetic resonance?
Besides the one that just said A up?
Well, she can be the same one.
Yeah.
Her?
Yeah.
Let's do it then. And do you have a favourite self-care ritual or practice?
Favourite?
Or most frequent?
So meditation is the most frequent.
Mm-hmm.
And no, not favourite, because it's like advice. It's like different times calls for different things. Ooh, yeah, there's one advice that I would like to give.
Okay.
Which is, in reference to self-care, I work from bed a lot. And I definitely recommend you check it out. But if you're in a relationship, don't do it when your other half is there. That's just damn rude. Thank you very much. I love you all.
So what's next for you then? What's coming up?
What's next for me? Well, I'm getting a new website built, which will have Yoga Nidras there for everybody to download at their will. These Nidras that I create are very different. They're very different and very special. They're very special because each one of them are a work of art. Each one of them encapsulates a journey, an essence, an experience that I've been through, that I've lived through, that I'm exploring. Each one of them would be linked with some form of therapeutic modal. And each one of them, well, not all of them, but some of them will also have sound healing in there as well. Because my use of sound with Nidras is very, very unique. So I do hope you will find that when it's done. It's at Declog Body Mind, which is the name of my business, which you can also find in social media. And I hope you enjoy them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Her Conversations. And wherever you're listening to this, if you remember to press subscribe, you'll be able to get the notifications the minute the new episode is uploaded. And if you want to find out a little bit more about me, my name and my website is Carol May Whittick. So it's CarolMaywhittick.com. And you can also find me on Facebook or on Instagram and Twitter under Kazmic. That's CAZMICK. So until next week, have a good one. Take care.